Shalom, everybody. It is December the
Shalom.
13th. We are on Parshat Vayehi. Can you believe we're finishing the book of Breshit this week? I have to say it's always a gratifying moment, but it's also an emotional moment. We get so attached to these stories and characters, and when we complete this book, we're not only saying goodbye to them, but we're saying goodbye to a portion of our lives and a portion of our learning. And I want to just speak for myself and say that this so far has been just so evocative for me in all the little discoveries that I
Six
have
three
been
six
making
one
for
five
myself
nine.
and in the
Try it
course of
again.
this
It's working. It's on. It's on now.
in the course of this in the course of the study, the things and discussions that have come up through our conversation have been really illuminating. So for that, I'm really grateful. And this is not only a moment, a milestone moment in our year, but it's a milestone in our lives. So that's a great thing. So with that anticipation of the chazak and nit moment at the end, let's dive into one of the beautiful moments in this parsha. It's the moment where Joseph comes before Jacob. And as usual, as we've been seeing in the course of close readings of these texts, that there is a story underneath the story. And I'm trying to tease that out. I'm trying to understand what the text is saying and what it's not saying, and how we can kind of build an interpretation or a portrait or a larger picture from this. And I think, of course, that's what interpretation does. That's what commentary does. That's what midrash does. But I've stayed away from traditional commentaries to just let the text speak for itself and let the associations that we already have in the text speak for us. And of course, many of the things that we say in interpreting the text are corroborated. I'd like to get corroboration by the earlier text. I should say this in a less arrogant way, which is many of the things that we're going to find in this have already been said by commentators, and we're just making our own little discoveries here. On the other hand, this is a way to read the text. Most people who read the text in translation don't have at their fingertips, the Midrash and Rashi and the whole wealth of commentaries, but they do have a good set of eyes, and they are filled with questions as to how all of this relates. And so, if we can get to some of that based on this text, I think it's a real dayenu. So here we go. We're going to talk about this moment where where Joseph comes to his father after learning that his father is sick. Choleh. This is chapter 48 in the book of Breshit, and I'm going to share the screen now. Here we go. So I'm going to do it in English, and then we'll do the close reading in Hebrew, and an interpretation. Sometime afterward, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to see you," Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me and said to me, 'I will make you fertile and numerous, making of you a community of peoples. And I will assign this land to you, your offspring, to come for an everlasting possession. Now your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, no less than Reuben and Shimon. The progeny born to you after them shall be yours. They shall be recorded instead of their brothers in their inheritance. I do this because when I was returning from Padan, Rachel died to my sorrow, while I was journeying in the land of Canaan, when still some distance short of Ephrat, and I buried her there on the road to Ephrat, now Bethlehem." Noticing Joseph's sons, Israel asked, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They're my sons, whom God has given me here. Bring them up to me," he said, "that I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes were dim with age, he could not see. So Joseph brought them close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see you again. And here God has let me see your children as well." Joseph then removed them from his knees and bowed low with his face to the ground. Joseph took the two of them, Ephraim with his right hand to Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand to Israel's right, and brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, thus crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph, saying, "The God in whose ways my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd from my birth to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the lads. In them may my name be recalled, and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac. And may they be teeming multitudes upon the earth." When Joseph saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he thought it wrong. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's. "Not so, father," Joseph said to his father, "for the other is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head." But his father objected, saying, "I know, my son, I know. He too shall become a people, and he too shall be great. Yet his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offering shall be plentiful through enough for nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you shall Israel invoke blessing, saying, God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. And now I assign to you one portion more than to your brothers, which I wrested from the Amorites with my sword and bow." Okay. So that's the text. I'm going to let it sit in your consciousness for a second while I offer that of all the stories of Jacob, and here this is the coda of Jacob's life. Of all the stories of Jacob, I'm going to offer the proposition, debatable to be sure, that this is really the tenderest moment in his life. We have, just do a flashback for a second over the last, 6 to 8 weeks, back from Toldot. It's Toldot, Vayetze, Vayishlach. So we're looking at 7 weeks here of Parshas, some 20 or so 23 chapters. So if you kind of do the flashback and remember Jacob as a youth who is conniving, steals from his brother, wrests the birthright and steals the blessing from his brother, runs away, has all those difficult moments in Padan Aram with Lavan, cheated out of his beloved wife, but marries a second wife and then 2 concubines who become kind of co-wives, fathers 12 children, 13 children. Dinah, of course, comes back to the land. I'm breaking some order here. Has all of this difficulty in the land, even though he's a substantial presence. The daughter Dinah raped, the massacre that perpetuated by Shimon and Levi, the challenge to his patriarchal authority by Reuven, and then the stories of Joseph, which begin with the abduction of Joseph and the sale as a slave in Egypt, and all of the fracture that is going to ensue in the family. It hasn't been a good ride for Jacob. We have not seen him as a benevolent face. The only time that I think rivals this is the moment that he meets Rachel. He falls in love. He is weeping. There's a sense of the joy of that love. It's where the Torah becomes positively shir hashirimic. I love that adjective. it's Shir Hashirimik. It's almost rhapsodizing in Jacob's love for, I think, maybe 4 verses, right? His love for her, 7 years went by like 7 days in his love for her. Okay, that's about as glorious as it gets for him. And from then on, it's really very difficult. And the discovery of Joseph's coat and the ensuing mournfulness, we would call it, a chronic depression that he goes into, is breathtaking. It's painful. Vayima'en litnachem. He refuses to be comforted. He only wants, essentially, wants to die. I think when he re-encounters, when the brothers tell him that Joseph is alive, that happens last week's Parsha, he can't believe it, and there is a lot of pain. He's a deeply emotional character, Jacob. But here, I'm going to say that this is the moment that he is at his tenderest, the moment that he is uh, loving, kind, benevolent, tender, gracious, but there's a little bit of old Jacob there too. Okay, so that's the Torah is pulling that out of us. It wants us to see a fully formed man, but it also wants to find the echoes of the earlier man in him. Okay, what do you get this picture? I'm presenting here a picture of a man. He's essentially on his deathbed, but what I want to argue as we read the text closely is that there's a little bit of Jacob in there. There's a little bit of him there. It's a favorite theme, especially with older people who lose their aptitudes and strengths and often their cognitive abilities in the very, very, the moments closest to death. But what is always comforting, always, 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 is that there's always an echo of that person there, and that's the comfort. The comfort comes from knowing that that person who is in front of you, who is on their deathbed, is that person who was always there. And I think that that's just such a deep truth of this text. It's what I would say makes the Torah great. It makes what makes the Torah great is our ability to find that truth in life, that a person dies very much the way they live, and the person who is on their deathbed, who is devoid of all of the defining faculties and characteristics of their life, is still very, very much there. Period. Okay, Ilana, go ahead.
Just a little comment. The fact that the Torah starts with his first name, Yaakov, and then when he gets stronger and he sits up, the Torah says Israel, which Israel represents his, like you're saying, power more.
Yeah, I love that, and I would argue, and we'll see this closely in the text. There is a bit of toggling between the names Yaakov and Yisrael, and scholars point to the fact that that's because there may be two traditions here and sources and all that, which of course may be quite true, but we are reading a received text, and we are the ones that, in receiving that text, are toggling with the text. And Yisrael, I think Ilana correctly associates that with, he gets the name after the wrestling, after the combat with the assailant. And Yisrael is the mature individual who, having arrived in Canaan, has basically been able to put behind all of his demons. But there's always a little bit of Yaakov there, and even though Yisrael is supposed to be his name, the text goes back to Yaakov for reasons that we could explore. Go ahead, Susie.
Yeah, as you were reading the story, it called something to mind, although the circumstances are different. But so Yaakov is saying, I never thought I would see you again, and here I'm seeing your grandchildren.
Yeah.
I remember somebody whom I knew, he's gone now, who is a Holocaust survivor, didn't know he was going to survive Europe,
Yeah.
fought in 48, had no guarantee he was going to, I mean, he was captured by the British and tortured by them, and he lived to see and be proud of great-grandchildren.
Yeah, it's such an amazing line. It's such an amazing line that he says this, and it's so totally applicable to these and other catastrophic situations. It's absolutely breathtaking. Okay, let's go back to the text. Okay, anybody else with a comment or no? Just okay. All right. So we're gonna look at this now inside, and what I want to show you inside is that the text itself is giving us by reading the Hebrew closely, we're going to get another story. Vayehi acharei advarim ha'eleh, what are the things that they're referring to back at the beginning of Vayehi. This the Parsha begins with telling us that Jacob is in Egypt for 17 years, and that his days are coming to an end, and he has already indicated to Joseph that he wants to be buried in the land of Canaan. So the after these things, I didn't really comment on this, but after these things means after having made Joseph swear, there's the old Jacob there, swear to him that he was going to bury him in Canaan, and what all that meant. And we could do a whole lesson on that, and in terms of what Joseph's status is and why that would have to be through the mechanism and instrumentality of an oath. But I'm not focusing on that. I want to focus on instead, the implication here of it was said, or they said, someone said to Joseph, Vayomer leYosef, Vayachar harei advarim ha'el, after the oath of returning my body to be buried in the land of Canaan, Vayomer leYosef, and it's not that he said to Joseph, it's someone said to Joseph. Okay, someone said to Joseph, Hine avicha choleh. So I'm arguing here that they don't live in the same neighborhood. Okay, that what makes this very, very unusual. Okay, I need muting here. What makes this unusual is that they don't live together. Okay. Okay. That what makes this unusual is that they don't live together, and that they're far apart. Now, I say that's unusual because you bring your father down to Egypt, and it's like, okay, so you can't take care of him. All right, we get that. All right, so you're going to at least put him in a nursing home. All right, so if you put him in a nursing home, how far do you want the nursing home from you? Well, I almost every single person on this call, everybody in this class has been in the situation. I'm going to just stop the share for a second, and where you have had a parent who has been in a kind of situation where you personally can't take care of them. So what you try to do, one of the great circumstances that you encounter in arranging care for your parent is proximity. Blessed are you if you have proximity. I can't say it in any other way. Would that we could have a facility right next to us, and would that everyone here be able to take infirm relatives and set up, a kind of, I don't know, not an ICU, but a nursing facility in your own home. I mean, we're not capable of doing that. You have to realize that not too long ago, that's the way people lived. People lived where you brought your next of kin, usually a parent, into your own home, or you went to their home and you took care of them there, and that's where they lived. Of course, they didn't live till 90 and 100 years old, but you were there, okay? And death happened in the intimate setting of home, rather than in the facility setting of a hospital or another kind of place, a tertiary care facility. So what I find interesting here is that there's real distance between them. It's unusual. It's unusual for anything in the pre-modern time for there be to such distance. And what that suggests to me is that it's the theme that Joseph is not completely free to do what he wants. You would think that Joseph has, a lot of wealth, a lot of capability, and has access to the best people. He can get whoever he wants to take care of his father. Seriously, he could set up an ICU in his own living room, okay? I'm not exaggerating, but his father lives in Goshen, and so the fact that Joseph gets told this means that Joseph lives at a distance beyond the normal distance. And that suggests that, what they have established here is a separate living area for the Israel and his family. And that comes about because of all of the conditions that were raised in the previous chapters. And it just suggests that physical distance means emotional distance as well. Gittel, you have a comment? Then Ellie, go ahead. And then Susie, okay. Go ahead. Gittel, unmute yourself.
Yes. So we know that Jacob went to live with his other children in Goshen. He wasn't there alone. So why would you assume that he had to stay with Joseph when there are many siblings? Often one sibling takes the responsibility for an elderly parent or somebody else who's sickly. And why does it have to be Joseph in your mind that had to have that responsibility? Why couldn't it have been one of the brothers?
Okay, so I think it's a great question because it never occurred to me to ask that question. Okay, it's a great question. It's a great question, and it's like obvious, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's obvious because I think you all have had circumstances similar to that, or no, certainly of people similar to that, and our lives are so spread out from everybody. It's usually entrusted to a sibling, and I don't have to name names here. Yes, that's what happens. But the text never leaves us that assumption. And so what I'm going with here is that the text, the commentaries say, well, who's going back and forth? So it's either Joseph's children or maybe a brother. Okay, so maybe someone else is taking care of him. But that just underscores the point. Joseph is like the governor of Egypt. You would think that he can move things. He's like the president of he can get things done. That's his superpower. And so the fact that his father is not under his own tutelage and where he could deploy all of his political and economic resources to give his father the best of care. It's to move his father into, I don't know, the best hospital, at the time, or the best people. The fact that he doesn't, and the fact that he's at such arm's length, to me, is just, it raises all these puzzles. Ellie, go ahead.
The same comment that Gittel had. Joseph brought him to Goshen with the rest of the family, and that's where he lived. He lived his retirement years there. Why should it be different now? I mean, you don't take somebody out of the intimate situation in which he's been living happily and bring him someplace else for your gratification.
Okay, so that just underscores the point that Joseph is living apart from him. He's apart.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
There's no doubt about that. And so he's getting the best care from the brothers and their wives, probably, right? And their grandchildren. Okay, go ahead, Alana. Go ahead.
After not seeing each other for 17 years, I would think that they should be extremely close and together. So, like you say, I wonder why not.
Okay, good. He's not there, and he's set up patterns of care with the other brothers. Marlene, go ahead.
Well, I also wanted to piggyback on Ilana's thought that they had been separated for so long. He didn't have a relationship with his father. His was a childhood relationship. And so that may be that arm's length category. But we're also here on Monday morning, and we know that if the Jews are going to be in Goshen, then the plagues won't hit them. If they live closer, and if Joseph brings them closer to where he lives, the separation isn't there for all of the plagues.
So you highlight a great point, which is that there's an ethnic, territorial, district separation from Joseph. Joseph is in the administrative capital of the country. Susie mentioned in the chat, and I'll just quote you saying, he's too busy to do this, right? And while that's a great excuse, it's like, I mean, I guess he's deploying that excuse, and that's kind of a sad comment on this. So go ahead, Barbara, Steve, or Barbara, and then Susie. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say we may be reading a little too much into it, because the Torah doesn't give you a day-by-day or week-by-week story. It gives you the highlights.
Yes.
Nothing to say that Joseph didn't come and visit every weekend or every other weekend. I'm
gonna hold that question because it seems to me a very valuable question. Let's hold it and see how that plays out in the rest of the story. Susie.
Yeah. So I did a piggybacking on what I forget who said. I think it was Marlene. That he brings them to Goshen because they're shepherds. They've got to be separate from there's an ethnic issue here. And I'm betting that Yehuda took responsibility.
Okay. Text doesn't say that, but
he's the brother who grew up and took responsibility for his life, and
nice.
Probably doing it here too.
Nice. Okay, so you get the midrash point of the day. Okay, good. That's a good drash. Good. All right, so let's go. So I'm saying it means that he wasn't there with him. His father's not in Joseph's household. He did move him. He didn't move him in with him. Why? They live in Goshen. They don't live in the administrative capital. There's a geography here. The verses on the side are the proof text from last week's Parsha. Come down and live to me in Goshen. Basically, V'yashavta be'eretz Goshen. Mi'artem v'ranatem erevi. Come bring him here, and I will set him up. I'm going to set him up in a different land. So there's a geographical distance, and there's a cultural difference between Joseph and his father. Hine avicha choleh. So I'm asking, what does that mean? That his father is sick. We already learned that Jacob says to Joseph in the previous little story, I'm going to die. So when the word gets to Joseph, Hine avicha choleh, it's like, that's the call, folks. You know, the call you never want to get. Your dad is sick. Okay? Is it a cold? What does Joseph infer from it? Infers death is coming. So then it says, Vayikach et shnei banav imo. He brings his two sons with him, et Menashe and Ephraim. All right, so what is going on here? Okay? Now, Steve, you just said that he goes to visit him every week. Okay? And I love that interpretation because that's absolutely a projection of how we live and an assumption that that's how children behave towards their parents. Forget today. That's how they always behaved. Even if they lived, the next block, they would always come. But the fact that he brings the two sons indicates that maybe, in fact, he may have come on occasion, but he never brought them. Okay? So I'm going to give you the kind of modern light, which is he brings them to reassure him, to reassure Jacob, to comfort him. What more could a grandparent want, right? I'm going to say most of you are grandparents, I guess. So I mean, isn't there what nachas can you have, right? There's no, and so all he wants to do is the natural impulse to just comfort his father. And what more comfort could there be than bringing the nachas of the grandchildren, the eneklach, to be there? Okay? Right? Okay. Let's go on. So, But we are learning a slight echo of Isaac and the blessing. In that story, Rebecca overhears Isaac's instruction to Esau. She orders Jacob to rest the blessing. Isaac states that he's going to die. Joseph is not taking any chance. So what I'm saying here is that, wait a minute. He hears that his father is sick. His father's already made him promise that he's going to bring him back to be buried. So he knows, and Joseph's not stupid. Of all the things you can say about Joseph, stupid is not one of them. He knows how to put the whole story together. He knows that his father is going to die. So just as Isaac said to Jacob, or said to Esau, go get me some game so that I may bless you before I die, he is saying, death is coming. I need something from him before he dies. So we have the creative ambiguity here, the ambiguity that Joseph wants something from his father, but also Jacob wants to do something. And so Joseph is in tune with this. He knows that his father may want to do something, and being astute himself, he knows what he wants for his sons. He has had sons in Egypt, and he wants his sons to be elevated too. It's a tightrope here, because on the one hand, Joseph wants to be a tribe also, but Joseph will never be the tribe. Joseph will never be the same as his brothers. That's denied to him. So he wants something for his brothers, and Joseph, being Joseph, intuits that his father wants to do something as well for them. Okay, I'm going to go on because I'm mindful of that. Vayaged li Yaakov, vayomer hinei bincha Yosef ba elecha. So the story proceeds through intermediaries. This is so stunning. This is so amazing. They don't talk to one another directly. It's like, here's a message to my father. Here's my father's message to me. You're sick. My father's sick. Come and see him. Now, obviously, he's going to die. And so it's like Joseph he comes to the reception desk of the home, and the nurses at the home run into the room and say, your son is here. And what kind of nonsense? I mean, I'm saying this terribly. What is that? That the nurse or an intermediary or a messenger has to go and see him. And on the one hand, I'm saying, well, that's awful. On the other hand, if Joseph were to barge into the room, that wouldn't be a good thing either. You never want to shock someone or startle them when you come, especially when they're very, very old and possibly dying. Okay, that not a good idea. So they tell him, Bincha Yosef ba. They brought him to the counter, and then the next one is Vayitchazek Yisrael Vayeshev Abayta. I love this. This is just a stunning moment. Okay, imagine he's on his deathbed. He's lying. He's in the home. The people are attending to him, taking care of him, and Joseph comes. Vayitchazek, and I'm a reader of this text, and I'm going, man, he's still got it. He's still got it. Give that to him. Look at that guy. You know what? Let's not forget how strong he was in his prime. The man was strong. He lifted that stone. He watered those sheep. He raised 12 boys and a girl. He had 4 wives. I mean, the man was a man. Vayitchazek. So the Torah, this is amazing storytelling here. The Torah is giving us just this kind of, a slight squint, a little wink of recapitulation of, look at the man, look at this man. This is the man who he was, okay? Isn't that great? What a blessing at your deathbed to have just that one final ounce, what would be the line? The last shining moment of strength. Vayeshev al hamitai, sits up in bed. Okay? You know what? On some days that's not easy to do, even if you're not on your deathbed. Okay? He's a proud, unstoppable man. Vayomer Yaakov al Yosef. So as Alana pointed out, it's back and forth. Yaakov and Yosef. He goes now, and this is his statement. El Shaddai Nir'ah Elai. God Almighty appeared to me, Beluz, Be'eretz Canaan. He appeared to me in Luz, in Eretz Canaan. And we know that Luz is also Bethel. And he blessed me. And we know that God appeared to him twice. So already, as watching this scene, we have to come to the question of, what is he referring to? Is he referring to the first time, the second time, or both? The first time, he is leaving the land of Canaan, and he sees the stairway to heaven with the angels going up and down, right? As he's departing from the land, and God appears to him, and that's Luz, and that's where he has nothing, and he takes some oil, which evidently he has, pours it on a rock, and declares this is the place of God, right? And he makes the oath, and he comes back to that place, and it's a moment where he re-encounters that early experience, okay? So we have to look deeply into the text and ask, which one is he referring? Is it the first time he leaves? The second? Is it an echo of both, okay? And I'm noting here, just file in this, that there are 9 words in this sentence here. So why does he tell Joseph now, why is he invoking this place? His destiny changes at the place. He can't take Joseph there, right? This is the tragedy of the story. I mean, I'm saying it with joy because it's such a beautiful tragedy, right? The tragic part of the tale is that I would like to take you there, but I can't. I mean, I wish we had transport. I wish I could beam you there to experience that, to have a pilgrimage. I would like to go to a place to relate to you this information and to experience this transition moment, but that is denied because of circumstance. Joseph is denied a pilgrimage theophany. I invented this term, although I don't think I invented this term. It's probably something which is, we have seen places already in Breshit, Bethel, Beersheba, Shechem, Hebron, places associated with the patriarchs that are so crucial for the geography of the land that to this very day, people will make pilgrimages to these places because that's the spot that X took place, okay? And so when you want to experience a divine or a transcendent moment, how would you set it up? You set it up by going to a place. This is the place where I grew up. This is the place where I went to school. This is the place where this happened to me. This is the place where I experienced my recovery. This is the place where I experienced this deliverance, right? Don't tell me that this is not important. But he can't do that. He can't take him. So he invokes it by language. God will never appear to him in a sacred place. We can't do sacrifice. We can't do sheep. We can't do barbecues. We can't eat. We can't have a feast. We can't do any of this. This is a crucial moment in the Torah. Sacrifice and place no longer operate as agents of blessing. It's a moment of transition. Be mindful of this, everyone who's reading this. Something has changed here. We no longer can make pilgrimages. We have to do things by words, by storytelling. Becomes the agent of transmitting the blessing. Okay, Vayomer Eli, and Jacob says, go back here, I'm sorry. El Shaddai Nira Eli, God appeared to me in Luz, in the land of Canaan, blessed me. And what did he say? Vayomer Eli, God said to me, I'm going to make you fruitful. I'm going to make you multiply. I'm going to make you into a congregation of nations. I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to give you this land as an eternal inheritance. So now, Jacob condenses the second part of the first part. There are 2 parts of the blessing at Luz. One is you're going to be a great nation. It's a 10-word thing that he's pressed to 6 words here. And the second part is the land, the promise of the land, 13 words. in chapter 35, and 8 words here. Okay, and this is the second appearance in Parshat Vayishlach. Vayomer lo Elohim, Ani El Shaddai, Perei Urvei, Goy Ukal Goyim Yeh Mimeka, Umlachim Mecharatzecha Yitzeu. ואת הארץ אשר נתתי לאברהם וליצחק לך אתננה ולזרעך אחריך אתן את הארץ. Okay, so that's what God says to Jacob when Jacob has returned to Luz. It's a long, expansive blessing that reminds him he's going to be fruitful and multiply, and that he's going to have the land. What Jacob does here is he compresses it. He says, when I went to Luz, I got blessed. God gave me a big blessing. I'm going to distill it down to its main elements here. We're going to be big, and we're going to have the land. Okay? Notice it's a 16-word statement here. Okay? Vata, shnei vanecha, hanoladim lecha, be'eretz Mitzrayim, ad bo'ei elecha Mitzrayima, and now the 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt, until I came here, li hem, they will be mine. Okay? Notice what he's saying here. He's saying, your 2 sons will be mine. Now, I'm just going to go back up and show you one thing here, which is they say to the people, the nurses at the nursing station, say to Jacob, Hine bincha Yosef ba elecha. Your son Joseph is here to visit you. Okay? The nurses at the nursing station don't say, your son and your grandchildren are here. We know from this verse that Joseph took his 2 sons with him, Manasseh and Ephraim. But when they told Jacob that Joseph was there, they said, Bincha Yosef ba'elecha, but they didn't say, Bincha uvnei banecha, your son and your grandsons are here. They only said Joseph. So Jacob doesn't know yet that Ephraim and Manasseh are in the room. Okay? He only knows that Joseph's there. So he's giving this formula to him in absentia, the perceived absentia of Ephraim and Manasseh. We'll go back to this moment. He's upright on the bed. He says to Joseph, God appeared to me in Luz, and he's saying, he wants to make me great and give me the land. And now, your 2 sons who are born to you in Mitzrayim, until I came here, they will be to me, lihem, Ephraim and Manasseh, ki Reuven u'Shimon. All right? They're going to be mine. They're going to be like mine, like Ephraim and Manasseh, like Reuven and Shimon. That's what, I'm adopting them. Okay? You li. Umoladetecha asher oladet acharem. And any children you have after them, lecha yiyu. They're going to be your children. Al shem achehem yikaru benachalatam. They'll be your children, but they will be fit into the tribal allotments of those other children. It's a very strange kind of formula, and it's a legal formula that's happening here. It's concise, it's to the point, and it has the structure of adoption, and that's exactly what he's saying here. Up until now, we've already had a kind of oath made between Jacob and Joseph. Swear to me that you will bury me in the land of Canaan. And this is another, it's not an oath, but it's a legal formula. Okay? Was Joseph going to have other children? And if so, what is their status? Will they be tribes? No. This resolves a legal problem of what to ascribe to them if they should come into existence following this moment. In other words, Joseph is still a young man. He still can have more children. But by adopting Ephraim and Manasseh and giving them the same rank as his own children, he is creating the boundary between now and future children We don't know if future children are born to Joseph. The Torah doesn't tell us that. Okay, but they are accorded an understanding. It's a very legal terminology here. Okay, and then it goes to this: Vani bevo'i mi Padan, and I, when I came from Padan, meta alai Rachel. Rachel died upon me. Be'eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan, Ba'derech, on the way, Ba'od Kivrat Eretz, even as there was more to go, Levo Ephrata, to get to Ephrat, Vaikbarash Sham, I buried her there, Ba'derech Ephrat, He Beit Lachem. Wow. So 21 words of this whole blessing is tied up with the death of Rachel. And that is heartbreaking, okay? Which only tells us that at the very moment of his death, it's not the loss of Joseph that ripped his life apart. It's the loss of Rachel. Okay, let me stop here. I'm going to stop the share for a second. What does this mean? What does this mean? You know, when Rachel dies, she dies with having born Jacob 2 children. Okay, so there's Joseph and there's Benjamin. Now, Leah has 6 children. Rachel, presumably, had more children to bear. It's a plausible thesis that she could have had more children, even though she had been barren. Here she starts with Yosef. She has Benjamin. They're in the land. It could be happy ever after. They could be, putting out more and more children. But the fact that she dies, means there's no more children from her. No more children at all. Now, Jacob is not Abraham. Abraham, after Sarah died, oh my God, Abraham goes to town. Abraham is an old man when Sarah dies. He has another wife. He puts out another, dozen children. Here's Rachel. If Jacob follows the pattern of his grandfather Abraham, he could have found another Canaanite woman and, been a father. No, it's all done. With Rachel's death, he's done. Okay? And that's the double tragedy. The first tragedy is she died. The second tragedy is there's no more children. Okay? And the sub story is he's guilty. He feels tremendous guilt about her death. How could he not? I've argued this in the past. I'm arguing it now. Here, right on his deathbed, the thing that he recalls the most out of his whole life is not, I bested my brother, and not I bested your grandfather Laban. It's that my wife died and I can't live with myself because of this. Okay, that's what I'm arguing here. Anybody want to enter this conversation interpretation? No, nothing. Okay. No. All right. Well, then I go on.
I want to say something.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Not directly, but Yosef was the son who Jacob chose to ask him to bury him in Canaan.
Yes.
He's not asking any of the other children.
Correct.
So it goes back and forth. Are they close enough? Are they distant? Are they very confusing? But he chose Joseph to promise him.
Chose Joseph. He chose Joseph because Joseph can get things done. That's why. Joseph, look, you could imagine what an operation it would be it's a funeral, okay?
It was.
It's a huge funeral. And the funeral, for a funeral, it's not only you need to arrange for the burial, you need the cars, you need the ceremony. I mean, it's a whole deal. And Joseph is the only one that could do that. No, the brothers can't do that. They're shepherds. They don't know how to hire limos. Go ahead, John. John, go ahead. Unmute. Spacebar. Press the space. There you go.
I heard a different theory as to why Jacob felt guilty. And that when Rachel took the idol from Laban and Laban confronted Jacob, and Jacob knew nothing about the theft, and Jacob said, whoever is found with this is not going to live anymore. And that Jacob thought maybe Rachel could have been found with it, and maybe it was his curse
Anything you say.
Oh.
pressure.
that he made that caused the death.
20 years later? No.
So he's still thinking. People will live with guilt their whole lives. I have a lot of experience in the pastoral department of this, where people make a deathbed confession, and because things hang over their lives, and it's very plausible that he's not saying, look, he's not going as far as saying I'm responsible for it, but the fact that he's talking about her as the defining story of his life only suggests to us that he feels a tremendous sense of loss and either guilt. Go ahead, Marlene.
And we read before, when the brothers first show up and they say that their father, that they have a younger brother and he's at home with the father. And yet what we hear him say is my father yet alive?
Alive, yeah.
So that he was told that the father was still alive, and yet he has to ask, so that he has this guilt. He didn't write home all those years. He never brought him up, even though he was the vizier and could do what, as you suggested, that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So maybe that's.
So there's all of that going on. Lila, I think you have your hand up, do you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. When he asked to be buried in Canaan, he asked to be buried in the caves he had purchased where Leah lies.
Right.
So he didn't ask to be buried on the road next to Rachel,
Yeah.
but he told his first wife has the place, if you call it that, of
Yeah.
honor.
Yeah.
And so it's in his heart, he loves Rachel, but to be a proper burial, it's with Leah.
He's with Leah. It's a very good point. Yes, because he's going to be with his fathers, not only his wife, and it's a kind of correction to the way that he did not favor Leah throughout his life. Bob, go ahead.
I was going to say that during Parsha talk, you often talk about stagecraft in the
Yes.
theater.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what you think would be the stagecraft here of, I think, the Torah showing how one family deals with unfinished business from multiple levels. Do you think this is an acrimonious approach to things? You said it was tender before. I'm wondering what the impacts are on Manasseh and Ephraim. So I'm just sort of, what is your stagecraft notion?
Well, I'm still going to side with the tender here. Okay, it is no matter how you slice this, this is a tender grandfatherly moment where the father and the son are having this moment, and in his mind is his two grandchildren and his dead wife. So there's plenty of pathos here. It's a tender moment. The staging of it, I think, I'm so inclined to seeing this as if it were on a stage. And so who are the characters on the stage at this moment? The characters on the stage are Jacob in his bed, Joseph before him, but the two sons, however their ages are, and it's ambiguous as to, are they young men, are they little boys? Okay, because we'll see Joseph brings them out from under his knees. That's a very strange phrase, and that means that he's hiding them from him. So the the staging is it's filled with dramatic irony. The audience sees the two boys, Menashe and Ephraim. Clearly, Yaakov does not see them. Joseph has brought them. So there's at least four people on the center of the stage. And I would, if I'm directing this scene, put an attendant on the side somewhere and somewhere near the door and giving them a certain privacy. That it calls for that kind of moment because he is on his deathbed and he needs his personal attendant, and that's just not Joseph. Go ahead, Ellie. Yeah.
Keep going back to the beginning. Jacob had 12 sons. I'm not even counting Dina because I'm not going into that egalitarian thing, but he had 12 sons. But he had one son that he favored above and above all of the others.
Yes.
And it started this whole internecine warfare in this family.
Yes.
These 11 brothers had no use for Joseph, and Joseph had no use for them. There was no respect on the part. They were separated all the way through. 11 of the brothers became tribal heads. Joseph didn't. This is the one time that he is pushed in the background, and his two sons who come from out of nowhere, born in Egypt of another, but it's a strange thing, and it goes back to rotten parenting. You don't favor one child over the other.
Okay.
Just don't do it. I haven't had 12. I only had 2, but I didn't favor one over the other.
That is why, as tender as this moment is, it's laden with all of those that dissonance. There's tremendous pain here because of what took place, and because Jacob is responsible. And look, it goes back all the way to Isaac and Abraham as well. Okay, I know we're way behind in time, but I want to just try to zip through the balance here. Okay, so I make my case that there are 38 words in this, 76 words in this whole little legal formula, and the half point is lihem. Okay, so it's back to my theme that the most important part of a text is in the center, and the center is it's mine. Okay, they're mine. All right, let me go to the next verse. So this is where the drama happens. Vayar Yisrael b'nei Yosef, and now all of a sudden he sees them. Vayomer mi'ela, and he says, "Who are they?" And I can't get over the fact that he doesn't recognize them. Okay, is the Bible playing tricks on us here? He doesn't know his grandchildren. Did they not meet once before? Is he blind? We know that he has difficulty seeing. That's what the text says. It's tragic, okay? There's a chasm between the grandfather and the grandchildren. Vayomer Yosef el aviv banayim, they're mine. Asher natan li Elohim bazeh, that God gave me here bazeh. In this, it's the disparaging idea that that's in the yucky Egypt, okay? Kachem na elai v'avarchem. And Jacob says, bring them to me, and I will bless them. Ve'nei Yisrael kavdu mizoken. His eyes were dim. Lo yuchal lirot. He could not see. Echoes of Isaac. Vayigash otam elav. Vayigesh otam elav. Joseph pushes them towards him. Vayishak lahem. Vayichabek lahem. And that's why I'm saying it's a tender moment, because he kisses them and he embraces them. And for bonus points, where does the kissing happen and where does the embracing happen? You get bonus points for this. Who kissed whom? Yes, go on, Marlene.
The brothers fell on their
Brothers
neck.
kiss. Jacob kisses Rachel. Isaac kisses Jacob when he's giving the blessing. But Isaac, in that blessing scene, it's filled with Vayigash and filled with Ishak and filled with Vayarem, smelling, inhaling him, but no chibuk. There's no embracing. Where's the chibuk? Where's the hugging? Recall one other moment in the book of Genesis where a hug takes place. It is Jacob and Esau. And this I can't get over. I can't get over the fact that the Torah is saying to us that in this moment, we have the echo of every other moment. We have the echo of Isaac and Jacob. We have the echo of Rachel and Jacob. We have the echo of Jacob and Esau in an embrace. Okay? All right, going back quickly. Here we go. And so it says he embraced them. Vayomer Yisrael Yosef, V'ro fanecha lo pilalti. I never expected to see you again. This is that beautiful line. And now God has shown me your grandchildren, your children. He hadn't seen them before. Okay, we'll leave that unanswered. From Vayotze Yosef otam ein birkav, he brings the he reveals them. So he's hiding them. Why the hiding? Go again, Eli. It's at the moment, this moment of such intensity, and there's still an element of subterfuge. He's hiding them. He brings them, Ephraim on his right, to the left of Israel, Menashe by his left, to the right of Israel. You get the picture, and he brings them forward. Joseph is trying to be the architect of destiny here. He's trying to organize the whole scene and play and choreograph it. Assimilated Joseph, Egyptianized Joseph wants to assert the rule of primogeniture, meaning the natural order of things. Firstborn is firstborn, secondborn is secondborn. I'm putting them the right way before you. And Jacob, you love him. Nothing doing. He can't see, but he knows enough not to be duped by his son, which tells you that he recognizes them, he doesn't recognize them, he knows damn well, what's going on. Vayishlach Yisrael Yimino, he puts out his right hand on Ephraim, and Ephraim is the younger one, and the left hand he puts on Menashe, and he crosses over his hands. Even the narrator is surprised by this. And Joseph, Vayevarech et Yosef, and now he blesses Joseph. This is strange. In doing this, putting his hands on Ephraim and Menashe, he invokes the blessing to Joseph, which, according to some commentators, is a way of saying he's really, by blessing Joseph, he's blessing his sons. Fine, but the text says it this way. Elohim asher italchu avotai lifanai, Avraham Yitzchak, Elohim haro'eh oti me'odi al hayom hazeh, God who directed my life. Hamalach hagoel oti mikol ra, the angel who redeemed me from everything, let him bless the boys and have them called by my name and my father's name, Abraham and Yitzchak, and may they be numerous. V'yidgu larov b'kerev haaretz. Okay, we don't have time to go into the God, my angel. Okay, it's a great interpretive question, and here again, interpreters break into two camps. Hamalach is simply a euphemism for God, or Hamalach is something separate. We can't resolve that right now. The point is that he's blessing the two boys. But we'll get to the drama now. Vayar Yosef, ki yashit aviv yimino, al rosh Ephraim. Hey, Joseph sees that Jacob is placing his right hand on the younger Ephraim. Vayera be'enav. Vayera is code in Genesis and in the Bible for a moral transgression. It's wrong. Eli, it's wrong because he is elevating the younger over the older. In other words, the whole book, 50 chapters of Genesis have gone by in which we've seen over and over and over again that nothing good happens when you do this. And he's still doing this. He's still doing it even at his dying breath. But no. Vayitmoch yad yaviv. And Joseph is trying to move his father's hand. And what I find so interesting is that he doesn't say it with words. Vayitmoch yad yaviv. He grabs his father's hand. He wants to use force. He wants to use power to move his father's hand. And Jacob, nothing doing. Vayomer Yosef al aviv lo chen avi. Now he uses his words. First he uses force, then words. Lo chen avi. Don't do it. Zeh bechor. Menashe is the firstborn. Put your hand on his head. And he says, nothing doing. Yadati v'ni, yadati. I know. Gam hu he's also going to be a people. Gam hu yigdal, he will also grow. But his younger brother will be greater than him. Oh my God. You can't undo that. He blesses them. May God bless you, give you as Ephraim and Menashe. All right. And then he says, I'm going to die. May God be with you and bring you back to the land. And finally, he gives to Joseph his blessing. Natati lecha shchem echad alechecha asher lakachtem miyad ha'omori b'charbi u'kashi. I give you one measure above your brothers. Okay, so what I'm saying now is that we have here, we have tender Jacob, compassionate Jacob, loving Jacob, and we got the old Jacob here. We can't get over. We can't. There's still a lot of him right there. He is who he is. We appreciate that, of course, in him, and he has to direct the destiny of his nation. That's what's happening in this moment. And I can't help but argue that the conflict that's underneath the surface here is between Jacob and Joseph. No matter how much love there is between Jacob and Joseph, what the upshot of this moment is who's your daddy? Who's in charge here? You're not the boss, Joseph. I'm the boss. I'm the patriarch. I'm the one who gets to determine the course of the family. Yes, we know you're a macher here. Yes, we know that Pharaoh is your boss, all that stuff. But one thing is for sure, God spoke to me. God didn't speak to you. God revealed his blessing to me, as he did to my father and your grandfather. He didn't do it to you. I get to pass it on to you. Is that understood? Do you get it? So this is what's happening here. Joseph, as powerful as he is, as brilliant as he is, as capable as he is, as beautiful as he is not in charge. And this last moment of Jacob's life reinforces that and makes sure that everything is lined up the way it has to be. And he understands this. Jacob, in his dying breath, understands that without doing it, the family and the nation is going to fall apart. And this is the way to ensure that it stays together. And that's why I have the blessings. That's what's going on here, I think. Let me get your reactions. Go ahead. Anybody? Ilana, go ahead.
But isn't it the exact repetition of Rivka when she was still pregnant and she was told that it's not going to be the way it looks or will look. The younger one will overpower
Sure.
the older one. Why is it done? Why couldn't it be done the right way from the beginning?
Why is it the right way?
It's a great question, and what's going on here, I think, is a clash of ideas, and this is the Bible's way of saying nature doesn't determine things. God, I determine things. Okay, you think that because you're born first, you get all the privileges? No, it's who I say. And Jacob is simply invoking that in order to demonstrate to Joseph that we still are Hebrews. We belong to that idea, right? And you, Macher, you live in Egypt, you run things, big deal. You think you're going to change it over to the rest of the world, the way that the rest of the world, does this. But no, I'm still here, and this is the way I say it, and that's the way it's going to be. Now, of course, later on in the Bible alone, we know how important the Bechor is, okay? I don't think the Bible can ever shake that, okay? Because you'll find, as soon as we get to the book of Shemot, the Bechor is the real, center motif. B'ni Bechori Yisrael. Israel is my firstborn, and the death of the firstborn, and all of that. So yeah, there's a tension in the Bible with this idea, but Breshit, no tension at all. Breshit doesn't want to have anything with it. Breshit, it's all about God determining the course of events and not nature. Breshit has a polemic against nature because Breshit, from the very beginning, is saying the world comes into existence not because of a big bang or an accident. It comes in because God said so. Go ahead, Bob.
I would offer from a potential Hasidic perspective that perhaps Jacob and Yisrael are continuing to wrestle with each other in this whole process, and that Yaakov may die, but Yisrael persists and lives on through the blessing. And I think that's something I heard a Hasidic rabbi once talk about.
That's interesting.
Very
That's
sweet,
interesting.
very, very lovely. You know, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful vort that you take a l'chaim
Wow.
with and you sing a zemer to.
Oh,
It's a
interesting.
beautiful. Go ahead, Marlene.
Doesn't the rest of the world also, I mean, Egypt was still a progenitor nation.
Yes,
It wasn't only the Jews,
yes.
sorry, Hebrews.
So I think we can't escape the conflict. The conflict is real. It exists in every culture, and it exists within Jewish culture, biblical Hebrew culture altogether. But it seems like, you know, from the very beginning of Breshit's on a vendetta against this culture, and I would say at the very least it's to say who's in charge here. It's that there's a force above nature. That just seems to me the easiest. It's the Occam's razor. It's the most elegant, simplest explanation of a very complicated problem, right? But the fact is, as you are correct, it's already in the Bible. It's already later in the Bible, and it's certainly in Jewish culture. The firstborn is the firstborn until, of course, the firstborn can't perform the duties of a firstborn. At which point, the families realign themselves, according to who's capable. I know of families where the firstborn is not capable of doing anything to run the family. The firstborn is, damaged emotionally, or not intelligent enough, or not interested, and the person in the family that is like the executor or the executive director of the family is actually, not the firstborn, maybe the youngest. Sometimes it's the youngest, right? Many families are structured that way, and I mean, all families are distinct in their internal politics. One, way to approach all these stories, and you've seen it in my sheets and some of my comments, is that the family has a micro political structure. That the internal political fissures of the family, I think, are very, very serious, precisely because, Ellie, correct, precisely because they're instigated by the bad parenting, right? And so that destabilizes the whole political system. But all family systems are in some ways destabilized because all family systems will have parties who are more powerful than others, who are more capable than others, who feel more entitled than others. We only in a modern setting does every child get an equal amount of the Yerusha. I mean, the in the biblical world that wasn't the case at all. The firstborn always got a double portion for strong reasons, economic reasons, that the firstborn was entrusted with maintaining the family line and therefore had a much more economic risk. Okay, we get that. But I mean, if you did that today, right? If you went to your financial advisor and said, okay, well, this child should get more than this child, and this child should get more. I mean, you want to sow the end of your family, you do that, right? I don't know.
But even at that time, Jacob did not distribute things equally. He made the coat of many colors to Joseph. He
Yes.
gave Joseph 3 times as much as he gave everybody. And then Joseph did the same thing.
Joseph does the same
When
thing.
Benjamin came, he gave him 3 times as much as he
Absolutely.
gave the other brothers.
Absolutely.
So
So
it goes, human nature, asserts itself.
you have to wonder what the brothers think when that happens, and it's.
I don't wonder, I know.
So it's natural. It's natural that they feel enmity and jealousy and lots of ill feeling towards him. It takes a large amount of compassion and self-understanding and self-security to rise over your jealousy, right? Oh, well, he gets that, so so you got the wealth. Okay, I have the looks.
What is the meaning that he's dividing Joseph's one tribe into two, in a way, like Ephraim and Manasseh?
Yes.
Well,
So what he's doing is he's subtracting from the tribal unit of 12, 1, and adding 2. So no matter how many times I try to add this up, you get to 13. So there, it's without Joseph, you add in Menashe and Ephraim, and you have 13. What happens is that Levi gets subtracted from the tribal league by being absorbed into the priestly role of the family. So Levi takes a leadership role that's not accorded any territory. Okay, so you get to the round number of 12. And I was just trying to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, saying, well, how many people does Esav have in his lineage? And I think he has 14. It doesn't. I have to do a little more research here to see what's the point here. And the point really may be that Joseph is disqualified from being a tribe because he's outside the land, and he never had that experience of the land, and he's going to die outside the land, even though he wants to, as we'll see at the end of this Parsha, he very much wants to be buried in the land, but he's not that figure. He's an in-between figure. He's not a patriarch and he's not a brother, and that's the point. We kind of feel for him that he wants to be a patriarch, right? But he's never going to be a patriarch. And he wants to be a brother, but he's never going to be a brother. He is totally differentiated. And so by elevating Ephraim and Manasseh to the brothers, it's done by fiat. It's done by the decree of the patriarch. And the brothers have but no choice but to accept it, because that's what their father decreed. So it's kind of brilliant. It's a brilliant maneuver. In a way, it says Joseph will remain for the rest of his life and all eternity differentiated from the brothers, but Joseph's sons will not be. They will be equal to the brothers, and that way we resolve this problem. So you have to give Jacob a little bit of credit here. Gittel, go ahead. Unmute.
So we know that based on the reading, we're quite sure that Jacob doesn't know these two grandchildren of his.
Yeah.
So why is it just to just bother Joseph that he's switching who gets the blessing? What is it that he knows that makes him switch the blessing to the younger one?
God told him.
He knows enough.
Well, but what does he know? If we know he doesn't really have contact with him, what does he know?
I'll tell you what. Okay, so you know what? This is where we get a little bit of, I don't know, it's not humor, but like a recognition. This guy never trusts anybody. Never trusted his brother, made his brother swear, doesn't even trust his son, made his son swear that he will take him back to the land of Canaan. And he doesn't trust him now either, because it's like, that scene in The Princess Bride where they're drinking the cups, and he poisons the wine, and they say you never, the lidocaine poisoning. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful, very humorous scene where the characters don't trust each other. Okay, and here this is a perfect example. This man, as loving, as tender, as kind, as grandfatherly and compassionate as he is, no, even in his last moment, still Jacob doesn't trust anybody. And I give it to them. I mean, that's, good for him. Good for him. Lived out his life, and he stayed true to his character. I mean, I don't like that, but that's who he is. Go ahead. All right, John, go ahead.
It's just great theater, great literature. I can think of Arthur Miller writing a play.
Yes.
And like, not really Willy Loman, but I think Arthur Miller could have done a great job with Jacob.
So it's such a great point, and of course Thomas Mann and Joseph and his brothers. I haven't read that to this, and the Midrash, takes this, and of course Andrew Lloyd Webber and all that. what makes this such compelling reading is that every single detail calls the reader to be attentive and to be involved in it. And maybe with this, we're way over, but I would say that this is really the message of Torah. It's the message of Genesis, certainly. It's that you're in the room, you're there. These are our people. We love them. These are our people. Aren't they flawed? Aren't they beautiful? Aren't they crazy? Aren't they, don't do this. We are there. And we are interpreting that. And it's still making a claim on our lives. That's the point. Torah is different from all of that because it's still making a claim on our identity and who we are and how we should live. And as we come to the conclusion of the book of Breshit, we see how Breshit opens us up to the entire Torah and the entire Bible by making that demand on us. It's saying, this is not just entertainment. Your life depends on this. Our lives depend on this. That's a really strong claim that no other literature makes. And that for that, we are eternally grateful to the book of Breshit. Okay. All right, folks, we'll leave it there.